welcome to another Sunday session, The Den, a space for men, hanging out with my bros, Ali, Marcel, Sheldon, Kennedy. I'm Robert Kennedy III, RK3. That's me, and the place to be. I don't know. I felt my old school rap happening just now. No, my New York City.
I'm gonna be honest with you, B. I ain't heard a word he said. The vibe is kind of light. I like it. The groove is dope, sir. I ain't heard a word.
Yeah. Well, listen. We're so glad to come to y'all today. Today is an important day. Well, I believe every Sunday that we come on here is important because we want to really share thoughts about manhood, about some of the things that we don't always get to share in public as men, some of the things that we've got to deal with internally, and we want to have real conversation. We don't want it to be too dark. But we definitely want it to be a real conversation that allows men to really process and think about, just stuff that's going on in their lives. So we got a guest coming on. I want to bring him on in just a second here. But Ali, Shell, what's up? What's happening? Anything that you want to share with us really quick? Any good words that you want to share real quick?
Man, I'm just glad to be back, man. When we were setting it up, I was like, man, it's been a month already. That went by really fast, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just, it's always good to have an outlet.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for everybody else, but often you get into these situations where you just kind of hunker down, and in hunkering down, you just don't take the time to really just express what's happening. And so I'm glad for this moment to kind of jolt me out of that space and give me an opportunity to talk.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I definitely vibe with what you're saying, Ali. Hey, I'm gonna switch my internet signal in a minute, but I just want to basically say, Ali, the joking part of it is so necessary. I don't think that, especially in this season, before you go hang and parlay with your people, but now in this season you kind of cooped up. So this opportunity on the Sundays, like our last episode, I was dying for the rest of the day because what I'm saying, it was so much fun just to not only hang out with y'all, but our spouses was on. So that was a good vibe. So this the space for men is really a space for men, man. Just dude, the space for men.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, listen, I want to bring on our guest. Our guest is phenomenal. He is understated because he doesn't really like to talk about the breadth of his experience and all of the amazing things that he's able to do. But when we're in the green room before, he was talking about, he works with athletes. He does a few different things. But when we're talking about athletes, I mean, he works and has worked with the Washington football team. He's worked with, I don't know if the Steelers is on there too. I think so as well. Yeah. So he's that caliber of person, and he doesn't always like to talk about the big things that he's done, but he is the founder of Turn the Page with his wife, and I have a special affinity for him because his wife, he calls her his Jamaican sensation. So anybody who's Jamaican, I've always got to say, hey, you're my brother. And he's actually not born in Jamaica, but he was born in Jamaica, Queens. So let's bring on my man, my friend, my neighbor, lives right in my development. So we're a few blocks apart. Dr. Johnny Parker, what's going on, Doc?
Hey, what's going on, Robert, RK3, Oliver, Sheldon? Great to be with you guys in the Den, a space for men. Great to hang out with you guys.
Yeah, man. So listen, just tell us a little bit. I know that you do a lot of work, First Baptist of Glen Arden, here in Maryland. Tell us a little bit about your work, what you do really quick.
Yeah, so at First Baptist, I oversee the counseling ministry, director of the counseling ministry at First Baptist, and I'm over the men's ministry, 10X Better Man, where we define the 10X Better Man as a man called to live above average to the glory of God. And so that's how we define it. And then outside the church, I have a consulting practice, the Parker Group. And for there, I'm an adjunct professor at Johns Hopkins, where I teach positive psychology, which is the science of virtues, how people flourish in business and life and relationships and community. And so I work with, so I'm an executive coach and I'm an author. So I get to speak at corporate events and keynote for corporate companies, Fortune 500 companies, and do executive coaching with these companies. So I get to do those things. And my wife and I do a lot of marriage coaching together for leaders.
Yeah.
And so, so that's the space that we're in. And we are having a great time in our 32nd year of marriage.
Woo! Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's awesome, man. I know that you do this. You have 10x for men. One of the things that I loved. I think I don't remember if that's how we met. I remember when we met in person, but there's this thing that you guys do called the huddle, and and everybody comes in their football jerseys, y'all. They have this thing that's how their men's ministry rolls. They have this, everybody comes in their football jerseys, and you just rap, you just talk. Tell us a little bit about kind of the genesis of that, and how meaningful that is for the men in your church, man.
Well, going all the way back, Robert, I was, and I started my career as a marriage and family therapist. So every Thursday at 5:00, I would have this men's support group, and I called it the huddle back then. And so I would do that. And so I've always done something with men, some kind of huddle experience. And then when I came on at First Baptist, became director of men's ministry, we said, hey, we're going to continue in that. We need a place like the Den, space for men, where men can be transparent, where men can be authentic, where men can be relational. And so, that's what we do. And so we have a time of worship. We show movie clips. We talk. We break guys into small groups. We talk. And I'm a primary communicator teacher. And so that's what we've been doing. And we've been doing it right through 2020 with the pandemic. I call it the popping peas of pandemic, pivots, protests, and politics. We've been doing this, man. So we've been creating a real space for guys to talk about stress and anger, Black fatigue, everything going on in the news. Even now, 2020, and now we still have some of this stuff happening even now in terms of our community and what's happening with Black and brown men and policing. And so we created a lot of space to have those kind of conversations and the process in a healthy way.
Yeah. So let's chop it up for a second here, guys. I think one of the things that Dr. Johnny just mentioned was really creating this space and having to deal with all of these different emotions or these different events. And as men, I don't know about you all. For me, it wasn't even implicitly, it was implicitly taught, but I had explicit moments where I was told that as a man, I wasn't supposed to access certain emotions. I was told that I wasn't supposed to cry, right? I literally, I was in my church. I was about 9 years old, and I was in my church, and something happened. I don't even remember the situation, but I remember something happened with another boy. Or it was a girl, actually, that happened. And I think I was upset because I wanted to hit her, right? And then because she had done something and I couldn't hit her. And I was so upset that I clenched my fists and tears began to come down my eyes. She'd gone off, but I'm standing there, my fist clenched, and there's tears coming down my face. And another older gentleman, well-meaning gentleman in my church came over and saw me, and he didn't know the situation, but he simply said, "Hey, what are you doing? Boys don't cry. Boys don't cry." So, as a little boy, you kind of wipe off, and you go about your business, and that message stays inside of you. It stays inside. So share with me, tell me a little bit about you guys. What are some of the messages that you received around emotions, like growing up and how it's affected you?
That's probably one of the same ones, man. I can relate to the boys don't cry, and basically kind of get yourself together and pick yourself up, get it together. That's a phrase I remember often. Get it together. So I always felt like I had to just be in this space, or at least if I wasn't in that space, I had to look like I was in that space. So, all right, let me get it together. Even if everything's crashing all around me, let me get it together. And I have taken that. When I tell you I've fought that probably to this day, even though writing about it, I still have those moments where I'm like, okay, I'm about to go to this place. Let me make sure I got my game face on. And so I can relate to that definitely 100%.
Wow.
For me, honestly, I feel like everybody's gonna have the same thing. We fell, we dropped it down, and somebody said, "Don't cry." But I realize now that a lot of those things are things that stick with you forever. As an example, I have 2 boys, and they say to me, "Daddy, you don't cry. Daddy, you don't. When things happen to you, you don't hurt." My response to them is, you know what? It's not that I don't hurt, but the way that I process it is just going to be different. Wow. Because I realized it was because of how I was raised. I'm just going to process it different. And it's very difficult because when they cry about certain things, I gotta say, I thank God for my wife, because she has taught me to allow them to process. The natural part of me is always going to be that, what you crying for, man? Honestly, and I remember even saying this to them, the only time you should cry is if you fell down 12 flights of steps, you know what I'm saying, hit each step on the way down. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, in my mind, it's got to be something that's so dramatic, so drastic. That's the only time that you are allowed to cry, rather than it being, I just don't feel good. These tears need to flow.
Wow. Well, I want you to hop in, Doc, on
Absolutely.
that. But before he jumps in, I just want those people that are in the comments. Hey, Crystal. Hey, Carvins. Hey, Patrick. How you doing? Those of you that are watching, those of you in the comments, go ahead and share this out. There are other men that need to be a part of this conversation because they don't always get to hear it. So do me a favor, share it with them. Click the link, or they can just go to rk3tv.live/the den. All right, rk3tv.live/the den. Make sure that you share that out with them. So yeah, go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, well, that's all of our experiences, right? I mean, that's the deal for me too. Everything you guys share, that's my narrative as well. And so the way we're socialized in this country, in the world, in many places in the world, a little girl can fall down, scrape her knee. She's expected to cry. It's understood that she would cry. It's safe for her to cry. We can fall down, have bone protruding, bleeding profusely, and what you guys just said. You better not cry. Man up at 5 years old. Tell a little boy, man up. And we get called names, punk, faggot, sissy, whatever. We get called a name. We get shamed. That's what it is.
Right.
So we get shamed. So now you follow that 5, 10, 15. Now you're 25 years old. Maybe you're dating in a relationship. A woman asks you, so what do you feel? And you haven't had a feeling in years. And so this deal of what do we do with our emotions? Whatever we don't talk out in terms of our emotions as men, we will act out.
Wow.
Or we will bury the emotion. But here's the deal, man. It gets buried alive. Right. Ooh. And so even in my own story, I've worked as a marriage and family therapist and counselor and coach. I'm 59 years old. Wow. I know you guys thought I was 39, but yeah, I'm 59. So
you're doing well. You're doing well, Dr.
Yeah, doing well. But here's the deal. In my 30s, when I began to really process my emotions, I began to battle with depression and panic attacks because I did not give myself permission to feel.
Wow.
I numbed out. And I had frozen feelings. And so, I got stuck in depression. I got stuck in panic attacks. And being a guy from New York and from the hood, I wasn't trying to talk to anybody about that stuff. That wasn't the manly thing to do. The only emotion that's safe for men to admit is anger. But to say you're depressed, to say you're sad, to say you are insecure, that wasn't the manly way. And so I just stuffed it and buried it. And my wife didn't even know how to connect with me. And And matter of fact, we just did a talk to a bunch of couples recently about that. How do I respond to my spouse's depression? But a lot of this was because the false narrative of being a man, and then just um, being distracted by toxic masculinity.
Wow. Wow. And that's so funky, man. It's like we take
I like
this
that.
stuff into our marriages, right? We get into marriage, and as Oliver and his wife Denise, they do a lot of marriage coaching as well. They've got a great show. You guys got to connect around that. But one of the things that you hear is that, okay, you've got to communicate, number one, and in order to communicate, it takes awareness, it takes being in touch with yourself in a certain way. And here come these bulls, here come these dudes that have been told they need to build these walls. Here come these dudes with, we're called knights in shining armor, but we don't take off the armor, right? Right? And now we're in relationship with someone who we've got to connect with, and we've got to care for, and we've got to listen to, and we don't know how. We don't know how. Yeah.
Know how to do it.
Yeah. So as both of you, so let me turn it to both of you, Doc and Ali. So what are some of the things that what are some of the practices that you share with couples and men in particular about how to now begin to access some of that, for lack of a better term, I'll say it this way. It's not really what I want to say, but I'll say it this way. How to access their sensitivity.
Emotional intelligence, Bobby. Emotional intelligence.
There we go.
Emotional intelligence. Yeah. For me, man, there were some things I had to do first, right? And I had to, I guess, test the waters, if you will, first, before I could really say, okay, this is what I feel like you should try to do. And I had to really kind of go through some moments where I had to attach my mental stamina and assess my mental stamina based on a particular scenario. And so if I'm going through something, because I can attest to what Doc Parker said with the panic attacks, that's me 100%. And then trying to figure out, okay, what is the way for me to mitigate that? And then looking at some of the emotions for me in the beginning, I'll be very honest, I didn't call them things like vulnerability or sensitivity. I use some strategic terms to try to kind of trick myself into, you know what I'm saying, into doing some of these things and sharing some of these things with my wife, and then asking for her opinion. You know, I'm feeling like I'm business meeting this thing out, and then realize, okay, let me call it what it is, right? I'm sharing with you some things that I'm afraid of. I'm sharing with you some dreams that I have that look like they're on the cusp of being crushed, and I need some assistance with that. And honestly, she was able to kind of help me see the importance of not just having her in that space, but having a Robert Kennedy or having Rob Wells or whoever it is in that space to do the same thing. And it kind of grew from there. So what I often tell guys is the accountability piece, right?
Yeah.
Having that accountability person that you can just bounce stuff off of becomes that person often that you can share those vulnerable moments with, because for a lot of us, it may not start off with, oh man, I'm not going to hit up Robert Kennedy and be like, man, I just got to have a vulnerable moment with you. You know what I mean? But I may Robert Kennedy.
Yo, bro, I'm calling you because I feel like crying. Can I
Right. But I may hit you up and say, listen, man, I gotta, I need to bounce something off you, man. I just need an ear.
Yeah.
And it'll turn into that over time. And so that's one of the things. There's several things, but that's one of the things that I've done personally that has been beneficial for me, making that transition from where I was to where I'm trying to be now.
Yeah, that's good, Ali. And I want to add to that you guys mentioned emotional intelligence, and that's an important term, because over 90% of our success in life is emotional intelligence. People who have it are earning more money. So in the business sense, Ali, what you said, earn $30,000 more a year. That's appealing to men. To do your job well, to be high performing, 55% of your job requires that you have emotional intelligence. So for that and empathy, and then for me, in my Turn the Page book, I talk about this front stage, backstage in a man's life. Every man has a front stage of his appearance, of his aspirations, of his accomplishments, achievements, and dreams, and that's front stage, and that's good, as Scripture says. Man looks on outward appearance, so the front stage matters. To men, the backstage matters even more, because the backstage is your true self and not the false self. Because we know how to make the false self on the front stage look a certain way, but the backstage is your true self. It's what the Bible calls your heart. That's where emotional intelligence comes into play. And the heart in Scripture is defined as the internal headquarters. Being a New Yorker, it's Times Square, it's Wall Street, it's Manhattan, it's the financial brain of the country. That's right. When we were bombed, they bombed New York, right?
Yeah.
Manhattan. And so we got to understand this internal headquarters of the place of our will, our emotions, and our thoughts. And so practically, one of the things that I've done over the years that have helped me and process my emotions, one, I keep a journal. Journal writing is very, very therapeutic. I tell all of my students at Hopkins to keep a journal. And you want to do it pen to paper, not on your phone. I get millennials in my classes at Hopkins, but they say, Dr. Parker, after a week of doing a pen to paper, it's different because your brain picks up on it and resonates in a very different way. So pen to paper. And you want to keep a journal where you're writing around gratitude. And be specific. I tell people you got to be specific to be terrific. And so you really, really want to identify, what am I feeling? What's causing me to feel what I'm feeling, and to be aware of that. And then the second thing is what Ali said, you got to have men in your backstage. Like the Marines, a few good men. You don't need everybody back there. Jesus had Peter, James, and John in his backstage. You guys are in each other's backstage. Every man needs a few good men. You need at least 3 to 6. Okay, you need at least 6. That if you die, your wife can call 6 men to carry your casket out. You need at least 6 brothers that she can find, that she can carry when we transition from this life. And then the third thing that's real important for us as men, we need creation therapy. You say, what is that? Robert knows. He sees me live in the same neighborhood. I just came from the woods. There's some woods near my home, and there's a stream and trees. That is a place that every man needs, a place where he gets the breath of God and his soul can catch his breath. And natural creation therapy, there's something about chirping birds, stream in the water, the smell and the fragrance of the outdoors, that is very calming to a man's soul. It's natural, it's free. And so creation therapy, the sunshine, and being outdoors amongst nature. Research shows that when we're amongst the trees, what it does to reduce stress. And going back to the journaling thing, when we journal gratitude, it's a mood booster. Is a boost in mood when we journal gratitude. So I just encourage, those are some things that I practice, and I had to learn how to articulate with my wife and other men what I'm feeling. And the emotions for most men is mad, sad, or glad. It's in one of those 3 categories.
Wow.
And it's important to understand what are those emotions.
So can I push that a little bit? Rewinding a couple seconds, but is confused an emotion? Because or you said mad, sad, glad. But I think there's another box that I hit last year, and the box that I hit last year was, what is going on? That's the box, because and you brought up the point of having people in your back pocket, or the people backstage with you. For me, I have sets of individuals but my brothers are who I'm going to automatically go to, right? Obviously, there's history and everything like that. But the good thing, this is a space for men, right? Transparent moment. Last year, around May, was it B? I started feeling weird.
Oh yeah.
I started feeling weird, and when I say weird, that's code word for I don't know what's going on.
Sure.
Right. Emotionally, I couldn't get it together. Mentally, I couldn't get it together. I was doing a lot of different things. The weight of the pandemic started to really get to me.
Yeah.
I did not know how to process my feelings at all. When I say at all, I mean at all. You know, I always pride myself on as being a guy who could kind of keep it together, but I couldn't. I called my brothers one morning and I said, "Yo, B, we talk every weekend. We talk during the week, but on the weekend we do like a FaceTime with each other." And I told my brothers, I said, "Yo, I don't feel well. It's not mad. I wasn't sad. I wasn't glad. I didn't know what I was. I didn't know what I was." Their response to me was, "Shell, you need time off. You need time off," because I was doing a lot. So, as you stated, there is a place that you need to go.
Yeah.
There is a place that but the sad part is the things that you're saying that I needed to do were things that I had in my back pocket for years. But when the crisis hit, I lost control of all of the things that I had. The creative therapy. I'm a bike rider, not motorcycle cyclist. So I hop on my bike and I'll ride 50 miles. I'll ride 60 miles. And that's just my moment with God. That stopped. I'm a writer. I stopped writing. All of these things, I was so broken at that point that all the things that I knew that could keep me together went out the door. Yeah. So, it was just a place. Yeah. It's just a place. So
yeah.
And when I say those three emotions, those are like headliners. There's a lot of different emotions that fall underneath that, and so those are it's just a starting place to give men an emotional vocabulary to start naming stuff. The more we can name stuff, we get greater clarity when we can start labeling and naming what the emotion is.
Wow. So I think so. Maybe that's how do you label or name an emotion? I mean, I think what Sheldon said just now was powerful because he's saying he essentially didn't know how to name something.
Yeah.
Right. There's some stuff that makes sense to us because we've experienced it before, or we have grown up, or we've seen it in somebody else and heard somebody else call it out. So, for example, for me, I had a moment, not necessarily last year, but like when times are challenging for me, I have a question in my mind: am I depressed? Because I don't know what depression feels like. Right? I don't know. I've never been in the room with somebody when they're literally going through the throes of depression, and there's like these markers. Okay, step one. Okay, yep, this is what a depressed person goes through. This is the second thing. This is the third thing. I mean, I've heard stuff, right? But I've never felt it. So if I have a moment where I'm sad or I'm down for more than like 2 or 3 minutes, the question, and for me, I'm a person that rolls through emotions pretty quickly, right? As far as the heightened emotions, I don't stay angry very long. I don't stay sad very long. I don't stay super excited very long. I roll through them pretty quickly. So if I have a moment where it's like 4 or 5 minutes and I'm still processing or feeling a down emotion about something, the question starts to come to my mind: wait a minute, am I depressed? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that because I don't know the feeling. I don't know, so how do we process that? How do we deal with it when we don't know how to name it or label it?
And just the fact that we give ourselves permission to sit with it, as you just described, Robert, and what Sheldon described, just to sit with it. If it's just, I feel low. I mean, if it's just, I feel low. I don't know what it feels like. It doesn't feel quite right. I feel kind of off. If that's the closest we can get, but the important thing is that we are willing to lift up the window shade to our heart and peek in and allow
Mm.
safe people to peek in,
Yeah.
right? Because again, I want to go back to, if we don't talk it out, we will act it out, or it gets buried alive. Now we are looking for vices, and we're looking for ways to, to bring relief and release. And at the top of the food chain, in terms of acting it out and dealing with depression for a lot of men, is porn, right?
Mm.
That's the top of the food chain for most guys. I mean,
Yeah.
even during the pandemic, many of these porn companies gave away free subscriptions and memberships because they knew that men were going to be looking for ways to get relief and release, and they knew that going towards porn, acting out with porn, or whatever way they acted around sex would be very, very common. That's at the top of the food chain. So again, the important thing is that we give ourselves permission to stop and say, something doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And that's where, many you guys are married, that's where our wives are like therapists, man. Because they've had more time to know their emotions and process. Honey, it sounds like you're kind of, I mean, I had to tell my wife, man, when I was going through my depression and panic attacks, this is how vulnerable I had to get, because I felt that out of control. I needed her to fly with me, because whenever I felt claustrophobic, I felt like I was going to turn that plane out. I'm telling you, man, I was going to listen. I was going to go to that cockpit and say, land this thing now, or else, I'm getting ready to go Brooklyn on you, but seriously, man. And then I had to tell her I needed her to go to the dentist with me, because whenever I started seeing a therapist, whenever my therapist was able to help me see that whenever I felt confined, I would have an attack. So it was a trigger.
Wow.
So I needed her to go with me to the dentist, man. And can you imagine being this is like 10 years ago, being a 48-year-old man, 49-year-old man, and your wife is literally holding your hand because you're afraid of having a panic attack. That's how deep it got for us. But that stuff has freed me, man. It's given me a deeper appreciation for the power of vulnerability, and for the power of processing emotion in a healthy way, and it's deepened my marriage, because my wife was always trying to get to my back door. I was like, "Nah, girl, you can't come back here. I don't know what's back here. It's too. Because I don't want you to punk me and think I'm a weak man. So you until I figure this out, you can't come back here." So that was another part of the story. So
yeah. So inside of that, I'm gonna let you go in a second here, Ali. Inside of that, I think one of the things, and I'm glad you brought up porn as an example here, right? Because sometimes as men, we don't know how to explain our processing mechanism, however flawed it may be, to our wives, without making them feel like they contributed to the process of us getting there, right? And so, like, a lot of men don't say to their wives, hey babe, I'm having a problem with porn, because they kind of feel like the wife is going to feel like, oh, well, why do you need that? I mean, am I not satisfying enough? Is there something that I'm lacking that caused you to turn to that? And the man's like, nah, it's not you. it's not you, babe. So how do we, Ali, you can jump in on this as well. How do we have those conversations, if possible, without making the women or the people in our lives feel at fault?
I think you have to be open with, the symptoms as well as the condition itself, right? Because porn is the result of something, right? And often we get stuck with trying to figure out how to process the result with our mate, but it points back to something that we don't ever talk to or speak to. And I love what Doc said, in terms of just sitting with that, even if you can't really label it. Because what we'll do is, because we can't label it, or like you were saying, Bobby, you were saying that, am I depressed, right? So I'll use myself for an example. I'm feeling something, and I've seen what that looks like at its height. Yeah. So I'm comparing what I'm going through, and I'm comparing it to its extreme, and I'm like, oh, well, that ain't me then. I'm good. And so I
Wow.
just brush it off, right? And so I think it's important to, when you begin to approach that topic, especially if it is a symptom or a result of something, that you expand that into what is the cause. Hey, I'm going through this thing, and I don't know. I've been processing, and I feel like it points back to ABC that I just haven't dealt with, and you have those moments. And I love the journaling thing, because the journaling thing, we've told couples this as well. I know for me, often in those moments,
Mm.
I may be able to articulate things in other moments, but in those moments, it's crazy. It's all over the place. It comes out wrong. And being able to kind of to write that out and sit with it a minute and look at it and digest it and process it allows me to then go to her with something that is cohesive and doesn't feel like an attack on her, and it's not, it's not missing and having gaps and things of that nature. So that's what's worked for me, or that is what I have been trying to be intentional about doing. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. I want to go back to a question. So Crystal, a woman, has asked a question here, and she's like, what steps can we take as providers to ensure, and I'm assuming providers she's talking about as parents or as guardians, people who have young men in their purview, to ensure that the next generation of men, specifically Black men, can navigate their emotions in a healthy way. Now, before we get to her question, I actually want to play the beginning of something, and I'm not going to share sound, but this is CNN. This is the beginning of the Dante Wright body cam footage. Right. And I'm just going to play that for just a moment. I'm not going to go up to the actual trigger itself, but I want to play that for a second. And then I want us to process that question here. So let me do that real quick. All right. So I'm stopping there because I don't want to, sensationalize all of the rest of this right now. But how do we deal with that? I mean, it feels like every week, every few days, we see, we hear, and so I'll even point this out. Hey Donnell, hey Gwen Parker, how you doing? Is that your mom? She said, "Good morning, son."
That is me. That's my mama. My mom.
Yeah. So how do we deal with, because there was another video that came out last week about a 61-year-old gentleman who got kind of, he was arguing about wearing a mask in the stores, and it got into this confrontation, and cops were outside and they blocked his car in, and he had a truck, a big pickup truck, like a Ford F-150 or something, and he literally got in his truck, rammed the police cars. A police officer jumped on the running board of the truck to try to stop him and put his arm in the truck. He wound up the window. The police officer's arm got stuck in the truck window, and he drove off with the police officer standing there. And the end of that aftermath was him alive in a jail somewhere, right? So Crystal is asking this question. Crystal's asking this question: what steps can we take to ensure that as minorities, as men of color, as Black men, how do we navigate emotions in a healthy way, especially when we're constantly being triggered by stuff like this? Go ahead,
So,
Shell.
this is not my area of expertise, and I'm going to put that out there right in the beginning. But one of the things that I realized is I had to come to grips with some things that happened in my life, right? Because it's not only trauma of what you see, it's trauma of what you experience. And for me, I've experienced being arrested. I've experienced being handcuffed. I was actually handcuffed in front of my mother. There's a whole load behind that story. There's a whole load behind that story. But the reality is, I've always felt like I don't trust authority because of that. Now, here goes the other side of it. I have, like I said before, I have 2 young boys, right? It is my responsibility to not push down my insecurities or my dislike of authority on them. But I have to make them aware of the possibilities. So, my friends and I had a conversation last year right after George Floyd was murdered. And one of the question was, what do you tell your boys if they get stopped? My statement was to them, your responsibility is to make it home. Your responsibility is to make it home. I understand the right and wrong. I get all of that. But your responsibility is to make it home. So if they tell you, turn around, turn your tail around. If they tell you to lay down, lay your tail down. That's what it is. At this point, I want you to follow instructions. Get home. Do not, do whatever it takes to get home. I know there's a lot that goes with that, but I'd rather talk you through the rest of it than bury you. That's really my reality.
Right.
So, again, it's not...
No, you got the same story, brother. I have my cousin Shawn Bell in New York, who made national news 2006, was killed on his wedding day. His father was going to be best man. His father had just left the club where Shawn was having his bachelor's party, and so his father was deeply in his life. Sometimes they want to make it about this is about fatherlessness. That wasn't the case in Shawn's narrative. And then my 2 sons have been pulled over on the way to church, because one was sitting in the front, one was sitting in the back, and they're like, why? They got suspicious. Why is he sitting in the back and you sitting in the front? He's going to pick up his girlfriend, and they're on the way to church, get pulled over, SUVs come. My sons are traumatized by it. But everything you said, Sheldon, same thing. Get home, and we'll deal with the trauma when you get home. So what's important is we gotta make space for our sons, and we have to make space for ourselves to mourn and lament. This is grieving. It's mourning. It's Black fatigue, because whatever we got to mourn to move on, because we'll get stuck, and now we're ready to retaliate, and we don't stay. We become toxic now, right? Yeah. Healthy me, strong we, and then so healthy me, strong we as a community. So I have to give myself, and we have to teach our sons and our daughters how to process and give themselves permission to be angry and to walk through the steps of mourning and grief. So I got to first be honest about and be aware of what am I feeling, and talk about that. I'm angry. I'm scared. So I need to be able to do that. So honesty, transparency with self. Secondly, I need honesty and transparency with safe people. That's that backstage. I need my community. I need the village to help me process what I'm feeling in terms of this trauma. Thirdly, I need that honesty, transparency with my God. I need something big. I need a big faith, a big God. I can cry out as David does. I need to be able to cry out, and because as Marvin Gaye said, it makes me want to holler, throw up both my hands, right? And we need all of that. We need all of that to process well and to be well. And so those are some of the things that I have walked with my sons through, and my family as well.
Wow. I mean, I think it's hard. I mean, I'm looking at Marvin's comment here. It says, making it home is easier said than done, as we've seen sometimes. And I think what he's referring to is the emotions that we're also talking about, right? So we're talking about, as men, we've been taught to have the mad, the sad, the glad, right? And then when you're in a traumatic situation, there's not really, you don't have you haven't practiced the in-between stuff, right? So you go to mad and you're and anger. And so when Sheldon is saying, okay, just make it home, yeah, I hear that message, but I haven't practiced it. Yeah, I hear the logic in it, but I haven't practiced it. Yeah, I heard what you said, but I don't know how to execute that because I only know these other emotions, right? So let's go to the next generation. So I mean, what do we do? What do we do with that? How do we process the emotion in the situation when we haven't practiced it?
That's a good question, man. And I was thinking while you guys were talking, and I kind of feel like Sheldon. I'm not the expert in it, but what I've leaned towards. My son is 18, and so what I've leaned toward, and he's bigger than me, he's taller than me. It's and just to give you a sense of like how people view him, right? I was with him in Silver Spring yesterday, and we were talking to somebody, and he told the person asked us both, "What do we do?" Because they just
Mm,
assumed he was an adult, and so he was like, "I'm in school," and so the person was like, "Oh, so
yeah.
you about to finish college, or what year are you in?" So he's that guy, full beard, the whole nine, right? So my thing that I've been doing is I've been really looking at it from a strategic standpoint. So there are certain scenarios that you're going to experience in your life that call for a certain level of strategy, strategic thinking and analysis in the moment, right?
Mm,
That strategy may or may not include your emotions. Just depends on what the scenario is. And in a scenario such as this, you're pulled over, and to speak to what Sheldon said, the strategy, if you want to call it that, is you got to get beyond this situation.
mm,
So, what are the things that you need to put in place to get beyond that situation? So, you got to think about your tone. You got to think about your body language. You got to think about your reactions. You got to think about the stuff that you say, when to
yeah.
not say something if something doesn't call for an answer. So, looking at those things from a strategic standpoint, and then once you get past that, then come home. Let's break some stuff up. Let's get angry. Let's process it out
Yeah.
without strategy involved. Right. Let's let the
Yeah.
most. So that's kind of been my approach. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not the expert. I don't know if that's the right way, but I kind of lean towards the same thing Sheldon was saying. Listen, you got to get home. So let's look at this from a critical thinking standpoint
Right.
and get past
Wow.
it, and let's do the emotional thing, because that's important. Don't come home and just go in your room and just lock the door. Let's do what we need to do, but in the moment, let's create some strategy to get through it.
But on top of that, Ali, I think sometimes, and this is maybe just, again, this is just me. This is not my again, not professional thought process, but there are situations at home that require us to have some teaching moments already, right? As an example, the way that my boy, we naturally talk with our hands. You know what I'm saying? We naturally emote, right? Um, and the so even further transparency. I am not necessarily an angry individual, but in my family tree, there are individuals that have hot tempers.
Mm,
Hmm.
That has been poured into my children,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And now I have to teach them. I have to teach them how to deal with that anger, right? Not
Hmm.
not squash it, redirect it. Redirect it. Because if I'm there saying, nah, you can't get angry, nah, you can't get angry, it's going to erupt. And I know that for a fact that it's going to erupt because I have eruption points.
mm,
Hmm.
So I have to teach them, how to respond appropriately to their mother, how to respond appropriately to me, how to respond appropriately to their uncles. My brothers, one thing I can truly appreciate about them is, we've always been around, they've always been around my children. So to them, my children are their children. If they find something is wrong in their statement, they have the go ahead. Dr. Johnny and Ali, you have the go ahead as well. I'm giving a blanket statement. Black man to black man. If you see my kids doing something, I have no problem with you saying, "Yo, you're a child of Sheldon. I need you to act appropriately." Right? And I think those are key things. By some of the teaching that we give in the house are necessary for when they go outside the house. A simple example. You remember when you at home and you playing around and you jumping on the couches and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. My Jamaican parents, what's you jumping on the couch for? If I send you outside, they're gonna do the same thing. If I send you outside, are you gonna do the same thing? Mm-hmm. Meaning, I'm training you here so that when you go outside, mm-hmm. you don't act the fool and go jump on your neighbor's couch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so just a little something.
I got scared for a second. Hold on. I got scared for a second, Dr. Johnny. I saw in the comments, "Hi, honey." I thought we were getting spammed, but I recognize that's Dr. Johnny's wife.
That's my Jamaican sensation, man.
I'm like, I said, I don't know. Are we getting sketchy comments right now? Right? Love it.
Yeah,
man.
I agree with that, man. I saw somebody in the comments say the strategy must be taught, and I agree with that. I do believe that there are actually some instances where you will have to role play this thing out as a team mechanism, right? And I followed this guy on Instagram, Jason Wilson, and he put up a post the other day where he had his son. They were doing some boxing techniques, but he was using that to allow his son to feel what that aggression and anger felt like, and then and how to redirect it in the moment. And that was his whole point of the post was, hey, we got to teach our sons how to feel these things and how to process them in a way that's healthy in the moment so that we don't go through, so that we, are able to survive these things. And I believe some of that has to be physically sitting down. My son and I have done these too. Because he's a thinker. So he'll come to us and be like, man, I've been thinking about this particular instance. George Floyd was a big one. We had several conversations around that and, what to do and what not to do and what he was thinking and how he was processing what was happening. I think that it's very important because that's what we do, right? There's a certain level of observation, training, execution, and feedback that has to take place so that they're prepared when these things happen. So I agree with that. The strategy must be taught.
Yeah, I wanna come to Doc. I want to ask you a specific question in just a second here, but I as we're having this conversation, it's convicting me as well because I kind of feel like there's some things maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe there's some more things that I need to be able to do with my own sons, right? But maybe there's some more specific conversations that I need to have. And so this is convicting me like, okay, yep, I need to put this on my calendar. I need to make this happen and be even more intentional. I don't need to wait until the next person is shot. I don't need to wait until the next news cycle and the next big blow up happens. I need to be proactive and be intentional daily, moment by moment, have that one-on-one time, and in that one-on-one time with my boys, be able to ask the tough questions and address certain things. So Doc, I wanna ask you about your experience with like football players, athletes, right? Because a lot of times athletes are bred to be on edge. Right? They're bred to be at 10 because if you're not there, you're going to get destroyed on the football field. Right? So how do you advise them to navigate that edge with sensibilities for life, or that same emotional intelligence that we were talking about?
Well, I think, and I find that you're right. That's very, very true in terms of the edge piece, and that piece of it, I call it the front stage of the performance. But the analogy, metaphor I gave earlier about what goes on in the backstage, now we're getting into the heart. We're getting into that man's story of who he is, what he wants, and why he wants it. He can't simply be defined by his performance on the field. and most men, as Scripture says, man looks on the outward appearance. That can't be the only way, and that defines masculinity, that defines a man. So one of the things that I sit with those men, and I have access to their backstage. I have them, and to the point we've been saying about modeling, because I got a 28, 25, and 22-year-old son, three sons, is teaching them how to process themselves. And so what does that look like? I have them do exercises, and I've modeled for my sons, and my sons have embraced the power of journaling. They know the power of creation therapy and how to process themselves. And I've had regular time. We've done vision boards with my sons, my two nephews. I'm like Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince, and my wife is Aunt Vivian. I've helped raise my two nephews, and so we've had conversations, and they've seen me. Even my son saying to me, "Dad, I've never seen you kirk off on my mother when you've been angry," and so I never knew how much he was watching me. So with the football guys and with men in general, one of the most practical things a man, he's got to get a vision for his life. So what does it look like? Take your name, whether it's Kennedy or Parker, form an acrostic with your core values. You got to have something that calls you to something great. And so you take your name, you craft your core values. The science behind that is men and leaders who lead from their core values are over 110% more effective.
Wow.
And so how nothing can be more personal than your name. And you want to have a conversation because this is your culture. Every man has his personal culture. He has a work culture, has a family culture, and a culture simply means the way things are done around here. So whether it's the strategy lessons that Oliver was talking about earlier, we got to create a culture first with ourselves and then with our families. And in that culture, we have something that we're practicing and we're talking about. This is what it means to be Parker. This is what it means to be Marcel. This is what it means to be a Kennedy. And this is what the Ritz-Carlton does in business every day. Ritz-Carlton has a stand-up meeting, and they loop every one of their 24 core values. They talk about that over a 24-day period. Every day for 24 days, they keep talking about what it means to be the Ritz-Carlton. Well, we need that for ourselves, man. Wow. My wife and I on Sundays, we're going to do it in a little while. We have a conversation by the fireplace. How are we doing being Parker? We've articulated our core values, and we've challenged our sons to live this out. And I've been a very vulnerable dad and sharing with them my good, my bad, and my ugly. And they need to hear those stories. And so that's what I've done with football players and saying, okay, this is how you perform on the field. But what does it mean to be you off the field? And one of the most popular team we did it with the Steelers one time. And, Roethlisberger has a lot of letters in that name. And so we did it with Ben, his wife, Ashley Roethlisberger, and the Steelers team. And we challenged them, man. This is how you want to be for the rest of your life. This is what it means to be you. And so that's just a practical exercise that I encourage people to do in the work that I do.
Can I do a shameless plug before time expires? Interestingly enough, so my wife is into vision casting as well, and that's something that we talk about constantly. She actually has a podcast, My Vision is Clear Experiences. Robert Bobby was on it last week, but the show for today that airs at 11:30. Check it out. My Vision is Clear Experiences on YouTube, everybody. But so the show for today, she's talking to John and April Nixon, just John and April. And the concept is your relationship does not have to suck. And the reason why that is because it requires that you take tools. There are steps. A lot of what she basically starts off by saying, we go into this thing with, blinders on, because you go in with this love affair, like, oh my, I love you. But there is a process. You basically said that you need a plan. You need a plan, right? So it's amazing to me that many times we go into this thing without plans. We go into life without a plan. Don't be afraid. We shouldn't be afraid to vision board as men. I think that's another emotional area that we talked about, right? So what are men afraid to do? We are afraid do vision boards because that's something that is normally attributed to women, right?
Wow.
But it is a necessary skill. So if there's a vision board party, you can guarantee that's going to be 99.9999% women, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, we need to take our behinds and go over there too. So
wow. So gentlemen, we are at the top of the hour, and our time. This has been an amazing conversation. Doc, thanks so much for stepping into the den with us. We appreciate you, man. So 10, 15 seconds, any last wrap up words before we jump out? Anybody?
Listen,
everybody.
I'll just say this is an important conversation. I appreciate us as a group for approaching that topic, and it is very true, man. I agree with what's been said. You got to vision it out. You got to craft strategy. You got to have the mission statement and core values. You have to align all of those things to the individuals that are in your family, so that you are, facing the right direction as it relates to all of these scenarios, not just what we've talked about today, but just your family health and your marital health and as a whole can benefit from that.
Yeah. Wrap us up, Doc. Take us out.
Hey, I enjoyed it. It's been great. And to go deeper with the things I just shared, you can go to my website, johnnyparker.com. And my wife and I do a lot of coaching with couples. And we love helping people do three things. We want to help you know your story, help you align your story. We want to help you master your story. And that's what we do. So you can go to johnnyparker.com, and we can definitely have more conversation around the things in our services and how we can serve you.
This was awesome. Listen, y'all, those of you that were in the comments, Andrew Nixon, Crystal, Wu, Othniel, Sean, SD Price. I can't go through everybody. Farron, Maxine. We got women on here as well, and that's okay. What we want you to do is take the message to your sons, take the message to your men, and have them join us next month on the third Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or is it Eastern Daylight Time? I never remember which one it is. It's just Eastern. It's like GMT minus whatever, 4 or 5.
Why don't you just tell them to look for when it goes live? Why don't you tell them that?
Yes, just do that. Matter of fact, here's what you do. Just bookmark rk3tv.live/the den. All right, rk3tv.live/the den every third Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We look forward to hanging out with y'all again next month, May, for another amazing conversation. We'll see y'all.